Namaste. Welcome to Global Perspectives. Our guest for today's episode of Global Perspectives is Jeff Dorman. He is the President and CEO of JDA International. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
Could you provide us a brief overview of your journey that led you into coaching?
I grew up in a family business. It was a cheese business, believe it or not. And we brought in cheese from Europe and made cheese in the United States. So I spent the first 20, 30 years of my life around the family business. And then I got into training. The business was sold and I had an opportunity to work for a wonderful company that took 15 of us and sent us to big companies like Apple and Mobile and GE and some big US companies. And I was training managers and leaders in terms of leadership development. But that wasn't enough for me. I still felt I could do more than just teach people skills. And what my passion became team building, working with teams. And I read a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which changed my life, and started to work with leaders and their executive teams. And I did that for many years and had some big clients and trained about 60 teams or so in terms of becoming a better team. But that still wasn't enough because I could just help them become a team, but what about their business? So I joined another organization about 8 or 9 years ago, a coaching organization where I learned how to help a leader not only think about developing their business, but to think about strategy and execution and cash. And so now what I do is really work with coaching teams. Occasionally I'll work with coaching an executive one-on-one, but I think I can have a lot more impact if I'm working with a leader and we bring their team into the room. And so that's been my journey in terms of getting to be who I am today.
So your journey begins with experience and is fueled by passion.
Yes, exactly.
Leaders often have blind spots. How do you identify and address these blind spots?
The number one determinant of a great team is the leader. The number one. Anything else you say about a team, the members and the organization and what they make and values, very important, but the number one determinant is the leader. So the leader has such a huge impact on whether the team is great or good or okay or poor or really or very poor like that. So leaders have to be open to really, I think, self-reflection and looking at both their strengths and their weaknesses, right? It's just so crucial. Now, there are many leaders who are not comfortable with looking at their weaknesses. And one of the essences of becoming a great leader, and I think that builds trust in an organization, is the word vulnerability, which is to be able to say something like, I was wrong, you were right, or I need some help, or this is not my strength. It's not easy for everyone to say that. So it begins with helping leaders become more vulnerable to know that they're not perfect and that they can need help. Now, how do we do that? How do we help the leaders see their blind spots? One of the tools I've used is something called 360 feedback. And 360-degree feedback is nothing more than take a list of behaviors and have the leader to look at that list and to rate themselves on those behaviors. I'm strong in this, I'm average in this, I'm weak in this. But more importantly, we give that list to all the direct reports in the organization. And if there's trust and the direct reports understand that they can be honest, they fill out the rating for the leader as well. So for example, a leader could have a rating on listening skills. And the leader may think they're a great listener. But if the direct reports are honest and say the leader is not such a strong listener, then there's a gap, there's an opportunity. A leader may think that they give praise and they recognize, but the fact, and they may, but the blind spot may be they may not be as strong. The point is, if the leader can be vulnerable and open to the blind spots, there's tremendous opportunities that we can have with them. If they're closed to the blind spots, it's very difficult, right? It's very difficult. People are intimidated, aren't going to be honest. But so that's what, the main way of helping the leader see the blind spots is to collect feedback from others and then share it and then give the leader the opportunity to work on that. And that's where coaching comes in.
So the 360-degree method is about introspection and getting external feedback.
Exactly. And it takes, and by the way, when done well, the 360 feedback tool is a wonderful tool for the leader to get honest feedback. When done poorly, and that means the people rating are nervous or are not sure if they can be honest, then it can become a much less effective tool. So how you set it up and the atmosphere that you create at the beginning can be so important.
So when we talk about success, for some people, success is a lot of money. For some organizations, success is being able to retain their team members. Yeah. For some, it's about internal satisfaction and your values aligning to the organization's values. Yes. So as a person with years of experience in coaching, how would you define success?
I think we have to look at culture. I just love looking at culture. Maybe that's what's helped me with my success as being a coach. I'll help you in the company to be profitable and to look at cash and strategy. But let's look at people and culture. And culture is around employee engagement and people scoring the engagement scores at a high level, people feeling valued, retention numbers being manageable, right? So we're not seeing high levels of departures from the company. So I think success is really about creating an environment where people feel like this is a place they want to come to work and they want to be at work. And you can really see that in many companies. You can also see companies that don't have this culture, that it's just a job. They talk about, I can't wait till Friday, or Wednesday is just, the half the week is gone. I can't wait till, the day is over, I can get out of here. Engagement is difficult. It is hard to create engagement. I read every year a study by a big company called Gallup, the Gallup poll. And they say that basically only 1/3 of an organization is truly engaged. So if an organization has 100 people, only 1/3, 33 people technically are highly engaged. Now, the middle third is somewhat engaged, and that's good, right? And they also say that the bottom third is not much engaged at all. So I think many companies that don't think about this, but I think the better companies for success think about what are we doing around engagement, not just for the top third, but how do we get the middle third more engaged, and what do we do for the bottom third to get them more engaged? And I think that creates success when you look at it. So it's the money side, the monetary side, but it's also, I think, the cultural people side that creates success.
When we have a target or a goal that we want to achieve, we look at this is what we want to do to achieve it. And when we achieve it, we call it success. So usually we talk about achieving success, and it's rarely that we talk about maintaining that achieved success. So how do you think we can promote a culture of focusing on maintaining the success we've achieved?
When it comes to thinking about strategy, strategic planning, we've taken that word and broken it into two different phrases. So we take strategic planning and we say strategic thinking and execution planning. So strategic thinking is giving thought to the future. 3 years from now, 5 years from now, who are we? What do we want to be as a company? What are the products we're in? What are the capabilities we have? Who are our customers? How do we grow? Thinking strategically, thinking about that. Execution planning is what does the next year look like? And what we say is the year needs to be broken into quarters, 13 weeks. So quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. So what we're talking about is looking at 1 year goals, taking the strategy and breaking it into, we have 3 strategies for each one. Strategy number 1. What does the next year look like? And we break the 1 year into quarters, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. And by breaking the goals into these quarters and having no more than 5 goals per quarter. So one of the problems that companies have, is they have too many goals. It's just and we joke about it being, if everything is a priority, the joke is, nothing is a priority, if everything. And there are a lot of leaders who say, well, I want, and the list, if you count it up, 25 things done this year. If we can really get the team to think about the top 5, and that's very difficult. It causes a lot of frustration and stress when you pull a team together and I say, what are the top 5 priorities? Again, how do we do it? I'm a simple man. I use the sticky notes. I say, you write down, what do you think the top 5 priorities? What do you think the top 5 priorities? What do you think? We put them on the wall, we sort it out, and so if we now have the top 5 priorities for the year, I'll say, okay, for the next 90 days, 13 weeks, or 1 quarter, it's the same timeline. 1 quarter is 13 weeks, 13 weeks is 90 days. For each of these 5 priorities, what do we want to accomplish? Now we can maintain, right? So this is about maintaining the growth or maintaining the processes that we want, but I think it's about clarity, right? Getting the clarity of what are the simple priorities and then getting the alignment so that every leader on the team is clear about the top 5 priorities, and they're also clear about their involvement.
So we just talked about priorities, we talked about goals, and we talked about strategy and planning. And in a world where careers are ever changing, the scenario is ever changing, sometimes due to war, sometimes due to the development of technology, for example, recently due to AI and the COVID, how would you advise the organizations to stick to a particular strategy when it comes to planning and implementation?
One, we look at these, what we call these different meeting rhythms, how regularly the team should meet. So quarterly, they should meet to review the plan. We believe, and that's usually a whole day off-site, the team together in their offices or in a conference room, but quarterly, how has the last quarter looked and what do we need to change? That's the best way to basically adjust, because the plan that we created a month ago, maybe it's right, maybe we're right on target. There have been no changes externally to the climate or to the economic conditions. We stay with the plan. But if we don't meet every quarter, at least to ask ourselves, how did we do the last quarter? How do we want to do the next quarter? That's why this quarterly rhythm can be so important, to make those adjustments. And then the plan is real. The plan is being used all the time, not just being created at the beginning of the year and put in the corner. And a lot of companies, I think, make that mistake of not using the plan over the course of the year.
A very recent experience that we've all had that I would like to bring into context is that of COVID. So during the time of COVID, there were a lot of remote works that were taking place.
Yeah.
And we have that culture even now. So with people working miles apart from each other, how do you advise the organizations to ensure cohesion and teamwork during this time?
COVID has created an incredibly interesting opportunity for organizations. Aside from the tragedy of the disease, what's happened though, in terms of what that's provided for organizations to be remote working, hybrid working, the freedom for people to be able to now be on a leadership team and living across the globe, and having people not co-located in the same office, which is what we had for the last 100 years, where I sit next to you, you sit next to me, we have coffee together, we meet. But so there's been tremendous flexibility around the new remote work environment. However, there's been a tremendous cost in terms of how that's impacted negatively. The lack of trust, the lack of culture, the lack of team. And so what we find is that the lack of new people entering the organization but being remote, the lack of onboarding, the lack, because now you're told, here, welcome, sit in your home, right, office, but the opportunity to not build trust, the opportunity to not connect is so challenging. So it takes double the effort to really think about that. And so when you think about creating a team or a culture, it takes tremendous effort. I think it is so important for leaders to spend time with people virtually, whether it's Teams or Zoom or WebEx or whatever technology you're using. The other thing I find that's really important, if the organization is located within an hour or two from each other, or if even people have to fly in, I think it's crucial to do, if you can, if you're the CEO, I'm advising you, can you bring everyone in one day a month? Now you may go, 1 day a month, that, I don't know. Well, I said, let's talk about that. Bring everyone in. Yeah, you bring everyone in for 1 day a month. And you have these structured exercises from 9 o'clock to 10. We do this. From 10 to 11, we do breakouts. We do breakouts from 12 to 1, or we have lunch together. We have opportunities for people to meet. We do some problem solving. And then you go home. But the opportunity that you've had in that 1 day, once a month, to connect is huge. It's huge, and I think it's vital. If you don't do that, then I think that's really a big cost of the negative around hybrid and remote working.
In relation to this, what do you think is the role of mentorship when it comes to building a new generation of young leaders?
Every individual in a company should have a mentor. Period. Positive part is it's shifted from many years ago. If we said you need a coach, the reaction is, what's wrong? What did I do? What's the problem? Come on, there's a problem here. Be honest with me. Why are you giving me a coach? What we've worked hard is shifting of, you're going to get a coach, Arya, because we think so much of you. Mentoring is the opportunity for a person to have someone that they can speak to. In our clients, we really encourage a program of mentoring. And many managers will say, I don't know how to mentor. I mean, you want me to mentor? I'm too busy managing and doing my work. I think if you could spend an hour giving managers a refresher on how to mentor, it's not that complicated. It comes back to listen, ask questions, the skills of listening, asking questions, and then just responding to what questions do you have. And so I think now after hybrid, it's even more important.
You have different clienteles. You have people who are just startups in organizations, and you have people who have a long history of being in a particular work. So how is the advice you give them different from each other?
It comes down to, where is each company at in their life, right? Is a startup and brand new and basically just barely thinking about what they need? Have they been in business 20 years, 30 years? But it really comes down to, I think, these 4 areas and I've mentioned them today, but I'll be really clear. One is spending time thinking about people and really honoring that people, people, strategy, execution, and cash. Let me come back to people. Sometimes I think you could argue each one of those 4 is the most important. What's more important, people or strategy? What's more important, cash or strategy? Well, cash. Well, what's more important, execution or people? They're all important, but without people, I think you have nothing. So whether you are a company that's been around for 100 years or 30 years or a startup, we've got to spend time talking about people. 2, we got to think strategically. You could be a startup and 1 year old. You got to think about the next year. You got to try. It's so easy when you're a startup to be so caught up in the day-to-day, the tactical. Every day I'm fighting fires and I'm so head down. I can't even think about next week or next month. Next year seems impossible, but it's important. So again, thinking about strategy is important. Cash, thinking about money and our cash flow and our accounting systems and the ability to know. So again, startup, where is the money coming from? What are the sources of cash? Where are the investors? A more experienced business, we have the cash. How do we manage that? And how do we continue to make sure that our accounting systems are in place? And then execution being the 4th area is, what are the 5 priorities? What are the priorities for the year, the priorities for the quarter? So you can see whether it's going to be different if you're a new startup organization, very different versus an experienced one. But I think these 4 concepts apply to both, no matter where they are. I think a good coach knows, by talking to the CEO and interviewing the management team, which is what I do, I'll know what they need around those 4, which would be very different from a more established organization.
Talked about success, strategy, growth. Now, one of the things that comes out very often when we talk about organizations, their success, their performance, is burnout. So how do you advise people to prevent or address burnout?
Being a leader can be a very lonely place. And I find that being a CEO can be incredibly lonely. It doesn't seem that way. You may think the CEO is busy and out with people and out with clients and out with investors. But truly, when you get a CEO to open up and be private, they don't have a lot of people to talk to. They're not given a lot of feedback. People don't really feel, people are intimidated by it. So the idea of really looking at taking the time to think about one's own work life, or their own work life and their own personal life. I was influenced by a mentor who talked about work-life balance. There's the work life and then there's the personal life. But then there's a third circle. So there's my work life. There's my personal life at home. But the middle circle is my life. What about me? The problem of mental health for leaders is more serious and it's kind of invisible. We don't talk about it a lot. You don't see it a lot. So I think it takes a discipline for every particular leader to really learn about mental health, learn about burnout.
What advice would you like to give those people who want to enter the field of business?
One is going to be get the practical experience and get yourself involved in a business. Find the company that you would like to work for. Find the kind of profession you'd like to be in, and do everything you possibly can to get involved and find the organization. I said two, right? The practical experience, the book knowledge, but find a mentor or a coach yourself if you can. And I don't care if you're 19 years old and new, find a mentor, find a coach, and have, and I think that makes a huge difference as well.
Thank you for this insightful conversation. We will be back next week with a new episode. Until then, hope you have a great week ahead. Namaste.